Now, do you think there's a growing revolution happening across the continent of Africa? Between June and August, we've seen a series of protests happening across the continent. Now, critics are saying that a revolution might be on the horizon, right? But here are some questions for you and I to think about, especially as we look into or we go into this week's episode. The first one is, why are young people demanding for a change as we speak, right? What exactly are they seeing on social media that has changed your perspective on Africa's economy and its growth, right? And last but not least, this is for you to actually answer. Do you think there's a revolution growing quietly on the horizon? Let's talk about this. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
The only reason Nigeria is the way it is today is because our oppressors are more organized than we the people. The moment we the people understand the need for us to organize against our oppressor, we will bring them down democratically.
Hello everybody and welcome back. My name is Moitinya and I'm a visual storyteller who happens to be visually impaired. If this is your first time stopping by the channel, welcome. For those of us who have been here, thank you for your continuous support. And if you haven't subscribed, please be sure to do that. Click on the notification bell, ding, 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 to be the first to receive any new content. Now let's talk about this important topic for today. So between mid-June and August, right, there was a massive protest happening across the continent, as I mentioned to you. It began in Kenya, where citizens took to the street to demand a dissolve of the bill. It's called the finance bill that was imposed by the president. And if that bill were to be passed, right, it would have increased the cost of everyday living. So the Kenyans were opposing it, they were unhappy with it, and they were demanding it to come to an end. Then we move on to Nigeria, where protesters decided to speak on an end to hunger and an end to bad governance. And so Nigerians protest, it was a national protest, by the way, right, from both countries. And they protest for about 10 days, demanding these issues that I shared with you be taken seriously by the government. Then we move on to Uganda. I don't even think Ugandans say much, but in this instance, they were saying things. They were demanding also for an end to corruption. They were gathering themselves to have this discussion, but their president, who has been in power for over 4 decades, threatened them. He said they are playing with fire. So the Ugandans really didn't push forth with theirs. But based on these different events that I shared with you, critics are saying there's a revolution building on the horizon. So with all that I've shared with you, right, I had a personal experience regarding the state of not Africa, but the state of Nigeria with regards to poverty, right? So in June, I visited Nigeria for the first time in 22 years, not by myself, with my family. So it was quite exciting to see uncles and aunties and cousins. But there were some things that I saw that I thought was quite traumatizing. See, I can't even get the words out. Traumatizing because I haven't been in a country for quite a while, right? And the first thing ever, the first and foremost, was poverty. There were young people begging. I mean, this is a part of the culture for sure, right? But to see that for the first time and to see kids as young as 3 on the streets, holding your legs, demanding that you give them money, that's very, very sad, right? Then after all of that, you know, those situations kept me up at night. I mean, how many people can you help? How much can you give, right? After my visit back from Nigeria, right, I began to prepare the topic for our episodes. And what really caught my attention and forced me to think about this particular question that I began this episode with was an article I saw on CNN, right? I read this a while back, and this was of a man who's been living under a bridge for over 30 years. He said he's watched young Nigerians come and go under the same bridge. Now, I used to be so proud when I speak about collectivism in the African culture, where we look out for each other, we take care of each other. But it looks like that part of our culture is slowly dying due to the fact that economically, financially, we can't even support our own self. So another thing I must share with you though, also when I went to Nigeria, I know I'm going back and forth with this, but was when I started hearing stories of parents selling their children because they themselves can't care for that child. So these are the type of stories that honestly breaks your heart, right? So when we move to the protests and we move to why young people are demanding for a change now, that's because young people are tired, and also they're beginning to see that Africa has the potential, Africa has the ability, Africa has the talent, Africa is capable, Africa is intelligent enough to actually create a better world for its citizens, right? So I also began to look at the leadership, the structure of Africa as well. When we look at it, there is lack of diversity, right? We don't find young people in power in Africa. We usually find older men in power in Africa. So this has been part of my curiosity, again, as I begin to put together all of these different bullet points for this particular topic. What are young people seeing on social media, right, that is causing them, or rather provoking them, to demand for a better Africa? What are they seeing? What exactly are they seeing? What are they not seeing is the question. But anyhow, 3 Nigerian governmental jets were seized by a Chinese firm, right? And one of the ways Nigerian government took off, this was just a week after the protest or so, Nigerian government bought a new jet. And again, this was right after the protest. So you can imagine what people were saying when this scenario occurred, right? Then we move on to Kenya, where MPs were flaunting their wealth all over the place, right? So again, we're looking at a country, right, where you're trying to increase taxes and where the everyday person can even make ends meet, right? And then we go online and you start to see MPs flaunting their helicopter, flaunting their boats of traveling to different parts of the world. So these are the type of things that young people are seeing, and it is provoking them to demand for a better Africa. And it is quite scary because according to statistics, it says that in 2050, right, 1 in 4 people will be Africans. So about 40% of the world's population will be Africans, rather. So if we can fix this type of issue, then what's going to happen when we have a huge amount of us in the population, right? And also, one of the things that really began to struck me as I bring all of this to an end is that Africans are beginning to see that they have the power to create the change that Africa deserves. And the only way they can do that is through their voices. And that's why we're seeing series of protests, right? Now, as of the question that I asked when I began this whole episode was, do you think there's a revolution building in the horizon? Do you think there's a change happening? Do you think something phenomenal is about to change the trajectory of Africa's future, right? Those are very serious questions. I have my opinion, but I'm curious, always curious to know what you think about that, and always curious to know what your response is to that, to the questions that I just shared with you. So be sure to share that below. I do want to thank you all for watching this video. Thank you all for subscribing, and we'll see you again next time. Stay tuned for great content.